I was always regretful that I got into programming after the era of the Commodore Amiga, especially that I had mates that were into demo programming, and I used to look in awe. I've always been into electronics, but it wasn't until the early 2000s I started writing for microcontrollers, and that got me into programming bigger platforms, and I've always favoured mobile platforms. So I put a little demo of this Amiga program last year, doing this map drawing, maybe at the end of last year. Decided to set up a C compiler since I was collecting some Amiga stuff. And today I've released something since I've gotten a bit of a handle on using the joystick and the system clock to get the time. So now I've got local astronomy working for Australia only for now. I've done half the map of the world and then got tired of tracing it. I'd probably have to start again as well, because the vector data used up a lot of memory, even for half the world. So I'd have to do a much lower resolution one to ever fit it on a floppy disk if I wanted it to work on Amigas other than the CD32. But anyway, it's a bootable CD32 disk. It'll read the system clock if there's a battery clock present, so that the Amiga will know the time. In the case of a CD32, the CD32 stock doesn't have a battery backed up clock, so if it recognises that the epoch time of 1st of January 1978 is the time that is set, then it'll allow the user to input a time. And since the CD32 on the screen before was a real one with an SX1 that has a battery backed up clock, it didn't need time input by the user. This UAE emulation of a CD32, what I'm doing right now is getting rid of the hard drive and loading up the boot CD, and I've already put the RAM back to the 2 meg chip to make it a stock CD32, and then loading the disk image, which was the same as I put in the real hardware in the previous video segment. So now it'll realise that it's 1978 and give the user an opportunity to set the time and date. It has a built-in independent calendar. Without even asking iOS, it knows valid dates and times. So you'll see me cycling through firstly the hours and the minutes. You can reset the seconds. The day of week is calculated by the program, not by the OS. It is very independent. Even the time that it's keeping in this mode is done entirely just by looking at the seconds tick over in the Amiga OS, and then keeping track of the real time on its own. So that when you exit the program, the OS clock hasn't actually been set to the time that's been set in the program. That's something to do in future, perhaps. You can also move around the map now, and once you've finished moving, all the information for the local astronomy should be correct for the location you've chosen, as long as the date and time are correct. The calendar will also stop you from entering a silly date. For example, you can enter the 29th of February this year, but it won't let you do it next year.